Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. It's a sunny morning here, and I'm back in the car on a weekday, so that's good. So Lawrence writes in asking if Unix hasn't been done to death, and he says it's depressing to see stuff like a Unix terminal in Serenity, and feels that maybe using Unix concepts is preventing innovation, and wouldn't it be better to do a clean kernel with a Unix compatibility layer perhaps instead? So that's a question I get fairly often from people. Although very often it's not a question, it comes as a statement, like you should do XYZ instead. Because I get it, that like people are opinionated about these things. But I personally, I love Unix. I loved Unix ever since I first tried it. I was in love with it even before I had tried it, ever since I saw that scene in Jurassic Park where the big sister sees the SGI workstation with a 3D file system explorer thing. It's a Unix system. I know this, you know? I thought that was so cool. And I don't know, I was always fascinated by Unix, and I love it. I've used so many different versions of it. I used to collect Unix workstations when I was younger. And I'm just a big fan of it. Although, I don't write C anymore. I used to write C. I don't anymore. So, it sort of takes me out of that old school Unix mindset quite a bit. Because you kind of need to be like an ardent C programmer to really feel the Unix feel, I think. That's why I set out to make Serenity a Unix-like operating system, because I don't want to make it a Unix, like a super faithful Unix, because I am using C++ instead. And I mean, obviously, I guess Unix is or was a trademark of some type. I don't know who owns that, maybe SEO or someone. So Unix-like has been the preferred terminology for a long time, I guess. Anyways, so I'm a big fan of Unix. So even if it were done to death, I'd still be doing it. But I don't think that Unix has been done to death. I think that something that happens often is that the people who do Unix, they end up doing their thing to death. And I don't like the way that modern Linux is developed, for instance, or not even developed, but put together. Like the development style, I don't mind so much. But the way that the distributions are put together is just, it doesn't make sense to me that you would build operating system out of 1,000 packages from random sources that you have very little control over. That, I mean, I see that it sort of works and you're able to hobble something together that way, but it just doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't appeal to my sensibilities, and I'm much more of a monorepo type of person. And I think that the original Unix spirit was very much the monorepo spirit. Like, the System 5s and the original BSDs and stuff, they were monorepos, right? Like, you just got a big, I guess, tape of of source code with some bootstrap binaries, and that's how the thing was distributed. And I really like that the BSD derivatives are still developed in this way today, with the big monorepo. But I feel that the sad thing about the BSDs is that they never took the step to building a graphical system. They just they stayed in that space of like, well, this is what a Unix system is, and we're just going to keep it that way, and it's going to be text-only, terminal, and then you can build on top of that. I don't mind running a system like that, it's okay, but since I'm developing my own, that's definitely not the way that I would develop. Like, I think that an operating system, de facto, an operating system is more than just a terminal interface, right? Like today, an operating system contains a graphical desktop and stuff. So if I set out to build a new operating system, it just feels so like a cop-out to me that I would just do the terminal interface, and then I can just get, X11 or whatever, or KDE or GNOME or something, or I don't know, whatever desktop you like, right? It just feels boring. Like I don't want to make yet another FreeType and Cairo boring desktop. There are so many of those already, and we don't need one more. So that's why I'm trying to take that, what I perceive to be the original Unix spirit of building like a cohesive system for multitasking, and stretching it out to also include a GUI. Like, now it's been done before. I'm not saying that this is the first time or anything. Like, I guess Mac OS is the most popular graphical Unix, but even Mac OS, like, is very much hobbled together. Although it may not always look like that from the outside, but like having seen the inside of it, I know that it's a hobbled together from from a lot of packages made by a lot of independent people and independent teams. They still share management chain after a certain number of jumps, but it's just not the same as a monorepo, like we're doing with Serenity. And for me, that's what I want to do. Now, I don't think that I certainly don't agree that seeing a Unix terminal is depressing. I think it's something that's very, very uplifting, because in the 1990s, I was doing a lot of Visual Basic and stuff like that as a kid, and I love it to death, right? But it was so limited, the interaction that you had with the system, because so much of it was, like you were sort of skill capped by the GUI, because you had to do the most of the interaction you did with the system you had to do through the GUI, and there was the command line, of course, but it was very, very limited. And it's fascinating that Microsoft has taken this long to even start integrating a proper command line in their stuff. I mean, I know there was PowerShell and everything, but even now, like, I hear from people using this WSL stuff, and like, they don't have a lot of nice things to say about it, but I think the idea is good, and I hope they get somewhere good with it. But if we're talking like back in the 90s, the command line was non-existent, basically. Like, you couldn't do anything meaningful with that thing. But at the same time, the GUI was amazing to me, and I really love the 90s GUI. And if you follow my stuff, then you know I do that. But I guess you could say what I would like to do personally, and this is my personal project, so deal with it. What I would like to do is to explore the alternate timeline where in the 90s, Microsoft Windows just decided to become a Unix somehow, or say that Microsoft Windows and some Unix, they got together and said, we're just going to fuse these things together and see what we can make. That's sort of the, I guess, the baseline concept for Serenity, right? That just taking all these elements of the 90s GUI and putting them together with the post-90s, but pre-now Unix or Linux user space. And also, like, the terminal interface is something that I dearly love, because it is simple, and it's like a language that is native to me at this point, right? Like, I know how to get around in a terminal, and to me, there is no more efficient computer interface that I know of. And maybe I could build one, but that's not really my area of expertise, nor is it an area of interest for me. Like, and I don't mind people doing experiments, but I just want to build a system that I know how to use. That's why I'm building it with a familiar GUI, and a familiar terminal UI. I guess my thoughts here are a little bit scattered, but I hope they come together to make sense. But yeah, I guess that's my answer to that. I don't feel it's done to death. I feel that, I mean, the modern Linux desktop and distributions, they're no fun, and they're not developed in a way that I can get behind, or put together in a way that I can get behind. And try to merge the 90s desktop with the 2000s Linux experience in a monorepo. Everything moves together. Yeah, that's what I like to do. Anyways, thanks for sending in the question. It's always good to talk about things, because it forces you to think about why you hold these opinions, you know. It was a bit of a slow weekend there. I didn't have much chance to do programming because I had to babysit, like I mentioned, but I think we should be getting back on track today. So, at this point, I don't have much more to say, so I'm just going to say thanks for hanging out with me on the commute, and I will see you guys next time.